So I just finished playing through The Darkness for the first time and wanted to give my thoughts. Overall, I really enjoyed the game. It has a ton of charm and it's painfully obvious that the team who made it put a lot of love into it. There's so many small details in every corner. All the graffiti that's littered everywhere in the world was actually painted and photographed to be put in the game. Every character in this world is written and voiced extremely well, and the world the game presents to us feels really lived in. Walking through the subway between missions is honestly one of the highlights in this game for me. Every inch feels like it was crafted with intent, and everything looks incredibly detailed and like it would in real life. Not to mention the excellent soundtrack that can be hectic as hell with metal bangers during the high action moments, and really solemn piano and orchestral tracks during the quieter moments. I also love the fact the game requires you to know the city and where everything is. When characters give you missions, they'll require you to go to a certain part of the city, and the way to get there is from the subway station. The character will usually tell you what section of the city you need to go to, usually over a phone call. Then you'll need to follow the signs in the subway station pointing you in the direction you need to go. This may sound tedious, but after playing the game for a while, especially if you're doing the side missions, you end up knowing where everything is on your own. Even though there is a map in the select pause screen, it doesn't help very much. There's no mini-map or fast travel or any crap like that. It's just you walking through the city trying to get to your next mission, and I really love it. When a character says you need to go to the Lower East Side or get to Grinders Lane, in my head I'll be thinking, right, which station am I at now? Do I need to take the train to the other station to get to where I need to go? Which staircase am I going up to get there? Then once I'm there, where am I needing to go to get to the mission? Again, this may sound annoying for some people, but to me, it really makes the city feel like a city that I get to explore and travel through instead of just segmented levels. Even the collectibles are phone numbers that you can dial and hear random people's answering machines, which is awesome, and another touch that makes this world feel so alive. What I'm trying to say is the game world is extremely believable and is one of my favorite aspects of this game. Now, this would be fine on its own, but luckily for us, the story is pretty awesome. It's not anything mind-blowing in terms of what happens, but just like the game world, it is incredibly well crafted and is really believable, even with the supernatural aspects to it. Which makes sense, since this game is based off the comic of the same name. I haven't read any of it, but this game really makes me want to check it out. It's basically a mafia story about crime families having bad blood with each other, but with supernatural elements to it. It's really over the top and stereotypical with the dialogue of these New York mafiosos, but it's incredibly well done and I loved it the whole way through. Our protag, Jackie Estacado, is incredibly likable and you can understand all of his motives. I also want to give massive props to the voice actors for Jackie and The Darkness.
What keeps him alive is that he never ever chooses a side. Yeah, too bad there's a war coming.
Jackie's voice is spot on for his character, and The Darkness is fucking terrifying.
You have done well, Jackie. I was always on your side. You should never have been here.
Need I say more? My only complaint with the story side of things is the fact that most character interactions are in first person. So when conversing with a character in a story mission, oftentimes you can ask them multiple questions, like Tools of Destruction started doing. When you ask these questions, it goes to third person, and we get to see Jackie converse with these people. But a lot of the time, characters just talk endlessly to you, and there's no dialogue from Jackie at all, which is really awkward at times. I won't spoil anything, but a certain character dies at some point during the game, and they're just lying on the ground, wounded, talking to you for the last time, having a heartfelt talk. And the whole time you can just run around, dick about, and even just skip it by progressing through the level. It would have been nice if, Jackie had something to say to this guy who's dying right in front of him, or could at least stay there with him. Again, this sort of thing is my only nitpick with the story and presentation. I just wanted Jackie to properly interact more with the other characters. Let's have a look at the gameplay now, and I gotta say, this is where the game trips up quite a bit. If you couldn't already tell, it's a first-person shooter. The twist here though is you have control of the Darkness, a demon-like being that requires a host to possess. While utilizing the Darkness, we have access to a few powers, but there's a catch. If we stay in the light, our Darkness powers deplete until we can't use it anymore. The way to refill our Darkness is to stay in the shadows, which we can do by shooting out light bulbs, which is a really cool mechanic. As we progress through the game, we acquire a few different powers we can utilize while using the Darkness. Some are good, some are bad, but for the most part I didn't really use them. I had the darkness out for a lot of my playthrough because apparently you have a darkness shield while using them, so you take less damage, but I didn't really notice a difference. Overall, other than the light and darkness mechanic, I didn't find the inclusion of the darkness to be very consequential. There wasn't many times in the game where they were needed in the gunplay. There's certainly some puzzles that require them, but they were few and far between. Speaking of the gunplay, let's talk about it. It's easily the worst part of this game, which really sucks as it's what you'll be doing most of the time. This game was only released on PS3 and Xbox 360. I'm not sure how the 360 version fares, but I played the PS3 version and it was a bit of a mess. The biggest problem is the frame rate is pretty terrible. I didn't get a smooth or consistent frame rate for the entire game. You get used to it after a while, but it is a big problem. Let's get back to the gunplay though, it's frustrating. First of all, you move incredibly slow. I don't know if it's just because the only shooters I really play are the Doom games, but this felt slower than most other shooters I've played. On top of that, when moving the right stick to aim, it takes a split second for it to reach top speed, so you'll be holding the stick all the way to one side, but it'll take a moment to actually start turning that way fully. I don't know why this is. I tried fiddling with the sensitivity settings in the pause menu, but that really only affected how sensitive it was at full speed. This short delay wasn't affected. I think the devs might have known this was a problem as well, as the game relies on heavy aim assist. The aiming reticle will often bounce from the middle of the screen to the nearest enemy, so there's less precision needed when shooting, but even this doesn't work sometimes, which is frustrating. To top it all off though, you can only take what seems like 3 bullets before you die. I found myself dying quite a lot during certain points in the game, often from an enemy I couldn't see and didn't have time to even find where they were. This is why I said I had the darkness out a lot of the time, because the abilities say when they're out I get a dark shield, which reduces some damage, but I never really noticed a difference. Maybe if there was a visual cue of when the shield runs out or something, that would be better, but either way, you have to take this game pretty slow because dying is very easy. To be fair on all of this, the game came out in 2007, so it was a pretty early 7th gen game, which we all know. A lot of games that came out at that time were incredibly clunky. Honestly, I wasn't having much fun at all during the first chapter, of which there are 5, but I powered through it because the story had me hooked, but I was getting weary. I won't spoil anything, but chapter 2 onwards it gets a lot better. Story-wise mostly, gameplay-wise it doesn't change much, but I did find myself having more fun at this point. Maybe I just got used to how the game played, but I wasn't feeling drained much from this point on. There were a few really bullshit levels, don't get me wrong, but I pushed through it all because the story really intrigued me and I wanted to see it to the end, and I'm glad I did. Here's how I would sum up this game. The gameplay is a mixed bag. The downtime and exploration is great and adds a lot to the experience. The gunplay is very clunky and of its time, but everything else in the game's presentation and plot more than makes up for it. So would I recommend this game? Yes I would, with a little asterisk there. If you decide to pick this game up and aren't having much fun with it, try to make it past the first chapter at least. Play through a bit of the second chapter and see how you like it from there. If the story and presentation isn't doing it for you at that point, then just drop it. The gameplay is only worth slogging through if you enjoy all the other aspects of the game like I did. This is exactly the kind of game that I would love to see a remake of. Update and fix the controls, make the graphics a bit less muddy, and just improve the overall experience. If that were to happen, I would have no problem recommending this game. As it is though, I'd definitely say to give it a shot, but go into it with your expectations a bit low. But this game did come out in 2007. The sequel, however, came out in 2012, and I really can't wait to try it out and see how it hopefully improved what this game brought to the table. Hey there everyone, cheers for watching. So this video is kind of special for me because it's the very first time I'm covering a game that I went into completely blind. Usually when I try out a new game, it was from a review or something like that. Or in the case of Klonoa, as soon as I finished it, I watched a bunch of other people's videos on it. When I play a new game, I like to do that. That way I can see what other people's viewpoints on the game was. Maybe they'll bring up a point I never even considered when playing the game. It's really useful to do that to get a more well-rounded opinion of a topic, when you can see it from all angles, good and bad. I chose not to do that with this game as I wanted to try and express my rawest thoughts about it without any outside interference, because I didn't want to just parrot what other people thought of the game. I wanted to share my experience with it. Who knows, maybe the video turned out like shit, and if it did, I'll just have to keep trying and to get better at it. But if you think it turned out okay, why don't you consider giving a like or subscribe, show some support. I'd really appreciate it, everyone. Anyway guys, thanks for watching and have a good one.